Welcome to the Twinkl Talks EYFS podcast. Working in the early years is busy, funny, messy, and exhausting. Join me, Shana, some of the Twinkl EYFS team, special guest speakers, and other early years practitioners as we talk honestly about our experiences. Whether you're listening for CPD, on your commute, or to help you relax, Twinkl EYFS will share everything you need to know about all things early years.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Twinkl Talks EYFS. We're from the Private Early Years team, and in this episode we're going to be looking at some of the common problems you guys face in your day-to-day work. So my name's Katie.
And I'm Charlotte.
And we'll get stuck straight in. First question we have today is, it's time to start thinking about our school transition reports. What information do you think is key to include? And the lucky thing here is that Charlotte is a preschool room leader, so she should know exactly what to put, so no pressure.
I just remember transition time, like the period where you were sorting all the forms out, as being a very hectic time and having to be very organised. Now, we used to use the school transition forms off the government website. Now, I don't know if everybody uses the same one. I know certain places have their own, or they might use, we've got some on the Twinkl website that are really useful as well for you to use. So it just sort of depends on what you use in your setting. But I think they're all the same kind of with what information you do include. So yeah, we always used to have, like, the first page was always a little picture of them, a little bit of information about their family and their sort of kind of like their address, things like that, just like little bits to include.
The admin bits, like the technicalities,
Yeah, and if they had any special needs or anything, that extra information that needed to be added, there was just like little tick boxes. So that was just usually the first bit that I would do. And then it was just getting stuck into their development, really, and milestones and where they were at, using the EYFS to sort of write down, because it's hard because you want to include as much information as you can, but you don't want to put, because you've got so many. I mean, I had so many to do, it's hard to...
Yeah. And you know them all so well as well, so there feels like there's loads of information that you also want to add in.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes you can get a bit carried away with putting so much information in. So I used to just try to keep it very, very specific, but, just to the point. So instead of beating around the bush, just being like, this is what they can do, this is what they struggle with, this is where they're at. And then we used to have like a colour code chart as well. So we had like 3 colours. So like, I think like the first colour was they needed some support in that area. Then we had another colour, which would mean they were on track. And then we had a third colour, which meant they were exceeding in that area and they were, needed that extra challenge. So we had that little colour code, which I used to think was quite nice for teachers because it had all the areas of the EYFS and then sort of the colour of where they were at in that area. But yeah, it's just being organised and I know it's easy to say when you work in the early years and finding time to fill them in.
Just producing that time out of dinner.
Yeah, and obviously these children like the back of your hand, so you know what information needs to be put in and you know what teachers will find beneficial. It's just making sure it's done, to the best of your ability and on time, and including information that you think teachers will need.
The bit that I used to find most difficult as a manager was once I had them all back, it was then making sure we could get it to all the different schools on time, because sometimes if they're local, you don't want to go through posting them, but then actually you have to find time to go to the school, or making sure you've got the right addresses. I was just used to find posting it out to be a nightmare.
Yeah, see, we used to do a lot of school visits. So when we did the school transition visits to the schools, if we were actually going there, I would take it with me. So it would save us posting them or having to, in our own time, sort of go out and drop them off. But it's because sometimes you can have about up to 30, sometimes more children going to school if you've got a big cohort of children. And, I used to like it when like there were like 5 or 6 of them going to the same school, because it kind of saved me. I was like, oh, a big bulk of them are going to go.
Just a bit easier.
Yeah, in one go. But yeah, it's a good 2 or 3 month process.
It takes forever, and it's just a couple of months of stress trying to do everything, isn't it? For sure.
Yeah, I used to find it a really stressful time, but it's worth it, when you're doing it all. But it's just having a team behind you as well that are supportive, and you can delegate, because we used to get the key person to fill the forms in. So whoever your key children were that were going to school, you would be responsible for that form. So I wasn't doing them all, but I would obviously have to look over them to make sure they'd been done correctly as the room leader. But yeah, it's just having a team as well that are very helpful and organised in getting it done. So we've also had a question around smartwatches and what is everyone's policy when it comes to wearing and using a smartwatch in an early years setting.
This is one that comes up quite a lot, isn't it? So I know that in the EYFS, it does now say that sort of there needs to be safeguarding around any new technologies, including smartwatches, anything that has image sharing capabilities or messaging capabilities, which does include the majority of smartwatches. So settings need to show now that they are covering that in some way. And it seems settings either go one way and then it's okay to have it, and some are just like absolutely point blank. So all my experience is that you just turn the Bluetooth off. So you couldn't use those capabilities of like messaging or sharing, but you could still have your watch on you, which as a practitioner, I found really useful, having something on my wrist where I could set myself timers at 10 o'clock, reminding me that I need to start getting like the nappy changes done, or setting us a timer for when we're doing an activity. And actually, I'm just a bit of a fitness freak, so I love knowing what my heart rate is and tracking my steps. So my experience with it has always been it's acceptable, but you do see a lot online where it's completely blanket policy, not at all, not worth the risk. What's your experience of it?
Similar to yours, really. We were allowed to wear it, but we didn't really have any of them smartwatches with the fancy cameras on now. And I feel like technology's moved on so much that you can get these smartwatches now with all these different features. So I get the image. I get if your watch could take pictures or anything to do with. I get that, because obviously anyone, you could be taking pictures of anything.
As a manager, you also don't want to think that the staff in your room are distracted by like listening to a message on their watch or like reading a message on their watch when they should be caring for the children directly in front of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could sometimes see people looking at their wrist, like with their watch, and then they'd be like, oh, I just need to go to the toilet. And then they'd be gone for like 10, 15 minutes. And I'd be like, I feel like you've just gone to answer your text message or something. So I get that they can be distracting, but I were like you. I used to like to track my steps at work, anything to do with like my heart rate, things like that. So I think it was a few months before I left my setting that it came in where you couldn't wear it. We weren't allowed to wear them at all just before I left, because my manager she said that's the policy now. We don't want you to wear them. So a lot of people didn't agree and they were kind of kicking up a fuss, but if that's what you've been told to do, then
Yeah, sometimes it's one of those things where your manager has said it and that's the rule, but it's also just worth, if it is genuinely really important to you to be like using your smartwatch for like fitness metrics or whatever you use it for as part of your practice as your day, and you're looking at a new job, maybe that is a question you can ask in the interview. Do you know what I mean? Like, for some people, that really is the be all and end all of their day. So if they can't track that, maybe that's a consideration if looking for a new role.
Because I know you can get very, very simple watches that just track steps. So I don't know if that would...
But they're so ugly in comparison.
They're like them thin strip ones out there, but I feel like maybe if you sort of explained to your manager that this is all it does not connect to my phone or anything like that, it's just for steps, it might, I don't know, it might...
Yeah, there's always workarounds, isn't there?
Yeah, it's a tricky subject, really.
Yeah, and honestly, it'll just differ setting by setting. And our third and final question today, which I think is quite a tricky one to answer actually, is what's the difference between a deputy manager and a manager? I'm currently a room leader and looking at jobs elsewhere for career progression. And I do think that, I know we say this a lot, but it is on a setting by setting basis, I think, because in some settings, for example, a really large setting, a deputy manager could be out of the room for 50% of the day doing general bits of paperwork and admin. For example, if at a setting the deputy manager leads on like funding, they're going to need a lot of time out of the room at certain points of the year to ensure that gets done. But I've also only worked at settings where the deputy manager has been in the room at all times, and part of their deputy manager role is also being like room leader and or Senko or something like that. So I think it just depends on a nursery by nursery basis.
Yeah, I mean, I've only ever worked in like one nursery for obviously all the years that I've worked in early years. So I've only seen one sort of view of it, which is the deputy manager that we had was also a room leader of one of the younger rooms. So she was in the room in and out a lot of the time. And then the manager would do obviously the office stuff, the admin, all that kind of thing. Because the deputy manager also had key children. She didn't have many, but she did have key children.
Yeah.
So she did spend time in the room so she was the room leader, but she was also deputy, so she had the two roles. But then we had a period of time where we didn't have a manager. So she then moved to management, and then the room leaders sort of took the deputy role on as well in all the rooms. We kind of split it between us. So yeah, I think it just depends on what your setting is like and how many, like staffing wise as well, because if you haven't got a lot of staff or you're struggling with staff, it is hard for, like, if you've got a deputy that stays in the office, they might need to come out of the office and work in the rooms depending on your staffing levels.
And I thought the point you touched on about, like, actually the natural step up for the manager role is the deputy manager. So they also need to have like their finger on the pulse of what is generally happening in the nursery and be capable of doing everything that the manager does. So if they're like ever off suddenly absent, it's the deputy who's expected to step up, and whether that's just ensuring staffing levels are good for the day, or checking the planning, or being that point of contact with parents or external like partners. There's a lot of pressure on a deputy.
Yeah, I think they're in that middle bit where they're sort of a room leader and then they've got to be a manager at points as well.
Yeah.
So
they probably have a bit more of an everything role, because I think normally it'll be the deputy in the room most of the time. So they're doing that, juggling other management responsibilities and their room leader stuff. And there's always extra responsibilities like Senko or apprentices. So there's a lot to go. You have to be, I think we've learned that deputy managers have to be highly organised.
Yeah, definitely. I can imagine it's a very rewarding but tough job to do.
Tiring, but aren't all nursery jobs?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Twinkl Talks EYFS. As always, we are on a variety of social media platforms like Facebook groups, Pinterest, YouTube, TikTok. If it's a social media platform, we are probably on it, so you can always get in touch with us there. But in the meantime, we'll speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
So that's it for today's episode. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you would like to join in or would like to know more, then come and find us on our social media sites. We have a Facebook page, Facebook groups, an Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube. All the links of where to find us will be in our podcast description. Come and join the conversation. And whatever you're doing today, I hope you have a great day.